Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the Lowell City Council meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the council prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work.
Amen.
Please join me in honoring America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good evening. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilor Murphy.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Dakota. Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
Councilor Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. The chair recognizes our first order of business, Jane Galvin from the Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust, to address the council regarding the upcoming Lowell River Fest. And I believe Jane was kind enough to pass out some information this evening. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you, Mayor, City Manager, and members of the City Council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to tell you about our upcoming Riverfest event. On behalf of the Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust and COOL, the cultural organization of Lowell, I wanted to let you know about our upcoming Riverfest event, and I do have a few guests with me as well. This has been an astonishing community project to be a part of this year. It's grown exponentially. Unfortunately, LZ Nunn was not able to be here tonight because her daughter is quite ill. So she apologizes for not being able to attend as well. This year is our 5th Riverfest event. Some of you may remember that it was held up in the Billerica Street end of the Concord River. But I'd like to extend a formal invitation to the City Council, the manager, and the entire community of Lowell, I guess I should say Greater Lowell, to attend this event on Saturday, June 11th from 2 to 6 p.m. This year, we've expanded the event to include both the Davidson section of the Concord River downtown, as well as Middlesex Community College. So you'll be able to experience both sides of the river for this festival. Riverfest is a watershed-wide event celebrating the Concord River and its tributaries, the Sudbury and Assabet rivers. This is the second year that we've partnered with COOL. Our partnership with COOL has helped us bring the event to a downtown venue, engage new audiences, and attract new sponsors. The event will feature, once again, live music. We've been able to gain the sponsorship of WXRV, the River radio station, once again. We have local ethnic food vendors. These are the vendors that can't quite make it to Folk Fest, maybe not have the capacity, but are thinking about doing Folk Fest. So this is a great trial run for them. And public art. Local vendors, nonprofits such as the Textile Museum, the National Park, and city agencies such as the Solid Waste and Recycling Program will be participating. The public art element of this event is a community-wide and district-wide art mural project. The project is funded by a grant from the New England Foundation for the Arts that COOL has received. The artist that we have selected to work with us is Lanu Zadareski, a Brazilian graphic artist. As I mentioned, we are also partnering with Middlesex Community College. So just a couple of sentences each. I'd like to invite Gabrielle Boscaya from Middlesex Community College, Lanu Zadareski, the artist on the project, and Betty Sadagandi from the school system to speak about the partnership. I'll let Gabrielle go first. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gabriela Buscaja, and I'm a student from Middlesex Community College, and a member in the Paul Sullivan Institute. So what we basically were doing, as a student, a member of the Paul Institute, we were involved in the meeting organizing this big event, and especially as the title says, Riverfest, Culture Flows. We want to approach all type of culture because we went translating flyers from Portuguese, Cambodian, and Spanish. And we were doing around to the local stores, giving people flyers to invite the people to come to the Riverfest. So that's basically. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle. And Lanu Zadoreski and Betty, you can talk about our partnership with the school system, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Lowell Zadoreski. I am a Brazilian artist. Thank you. That makes it much easier. I've been working with the Lowell Riverfest Cultural Flows as a designer for the logo. I created the logo as well. I created the project for the panels that will be distributed. That was distributed to all the schools. That Betty Sandegari is going to be talk a little bit more later. Also, I'm a sculptor. I'm going to bring one of the sculptures going to be presented at the events day. And I'm also working with a revolving museum with some of the students, helping and supporting them along this project. So it's been a great opportunity. I'm very thankful, and I hope to see you all on June 11. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I think it's important to note the extent to which the Lowell Public Schools are involved in this project. We have 21 art teachers, 19 public schools, and about 500 to 600 students who have created 19 panels that will form one gigantic piece of public art. And I think that's a great step forward for the public schools and for the cultural organization of Lowell. I look forward to many more projects where we get the school community involved in public and civic community events.
Thank you.
So, again, we hope that you can attend. The event's website is lowellriverfest.org. There'll be hands-on activities for all sorts of people, kids, adults. You get to meet live native river critters. It's a beautiful scenic section of the river. I promise you the weather can only be better than last year, for those of you that were there. So we look forward to seeing you June 11th from 2 to 6, and we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane, very much. We'll be there. Thank you. Moving on, the chair would like to recognize Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber to a man who didn't live in this city, but was very good to this city. His name is John Dimitro, a very kind and generous man whose family instilled in him the concerns he should have for our senior citizens, and he certainly did. He was very involved with the Lawrence, Methuen, and the Lowell Senior Citizen Centers, volunteering in his own center, but donating to his as well as ours. He would often come and visit our senior center and take all the good that was going on at our center and try to implement them in Lawrence and Methuen. He was quite amazed at all that our center had to offer. Former Mayor Michael Sullivan called John a classic guy whose main issue was the elderly, and further said that John was one of the noblest people of Lawrence. He was my friend, a friend of our seniors, and he will be truly missed. He gave considerable amount of money, sometimes anonymously, but I knew that it was him, to the Friends of the Council on Aging so that we may put forth and implement different programs and buy certain amenities for our senior center. And he was just amazed at how our senior center functioned, so he brought the good back to his own. Thank you very much for allowing me to do that.
Thank you, Councilor Mercier. May we all now rise in a moment of silence in darkened chambers? Thank you. May he rest in peace. Moving on with the agenda, minutes of the May 24th meeting for acceptance. Motion by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Murphy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Under the city manager section of the agenda, we have communications from the city manager, responses to council motions, requests, and we also have a presentation in the FY12 budget process. Anybody have any communications, or do we want to go right into the...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I
Councilor
just
Mercer.
had one question that was in our packet about the city seeks to bag trash offenders, and I was wondering who's going to enforce that? Because I know that it's quite hard for one person to do everything, because I know we had two people and that person moved to another department, so do we,
Mr. Manager?
or is it going to be a shared
It's going to be a shared responsibility with our all of our inspectional services personnel. So in effect, we're going to have more people out on the street doing it. Sean Shanahan, who did an outstanding job as solid waste inspector, brings with him over to inspectional services, where he is now working within the city, the experience and expertise, and he's working with the other personnel in that office so that they will be able to do that on their regular routes as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott and Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received a communication from the city manager regarding my motion on the cost to the police garage, and I appreciate the information, Mr. Manager. And it's helpful, but my motion was not to have the city manager report, but was to have, and I'll read it, May 17th, request the city auditor report on all the costs expended to date, as well as anticipated costs for the new police garage on Arch Street. And the reason for that is you work for the council. And I know the manager's position. I listened to it back in August, and I voted for this project, but after visiting it and seeing it, that's why I had questions, and I wanted you to report on exactly what has been spent to date, including the cleanup costs, which I'm not sure were factored in. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. That doesn't mean that this information from the manager is not helpful, but I just wanted it from you, who is independent and works for this council, and not the manager. So,
If I may.
Madam Auditor.
Actually, I gave you that number that night, the same night as you made the motion. I gave you the exact dollar amount we had spent.
528. I
Correct.
was hoping that I'd get a little bit more of a breakdown to see exactly what
Say
that
night, but
what
I'd be
that
more
covered.
than happy to give you
And I
the
think I
exact-
explained, including the overtime costs that will be, should be factored in there, because all the work is being done on overtime. I'm not sure if I mentioned the cleanup costs, but apparently there was trash from the basement to the ceiling, and that should be factored in. But I do know there was an article in tonight's paper, Mr. Manager, and the reason why I questioned it is because and again, I voted for it, and I'm not afraid to say that, I may have made a mistake when I look at the work that has to go in, and the work that we, I'm not a full-time person. That's your job, and when you brought it in, I looked at the savings, and and I trusted your opinion, because that's why we hire you. So I'm just curious, when's the last time you were down there, Mr. Manager?
I was there probably a month ago. I haven't been there recently, I don't believe, but roughly a month ago.
So a month ago, that's probably the time that I was there, and I did see some pictures, and it's good that there clearly have been some changes, and the stairs are a good start. But when you came in with your recommendation, I relied heavily on the recommendation. I'm not afraid to say that I made a mistake based upon the numbers. That was it, nothing more. And I really just asked questions, and it was in August last year. We were told the garage could be brought up to standard, and I trusted that was the truth. We were told the roof was going to be able to be raised, and that is not the case. So to some degree, I feel like we were sold a bill of goods, and I can't, for the life of me, understand if we put together specs that required certain things, including a lift that could take, a garage bay that were going to accommodate vehicles of a certain width and height, and we learned that the roof can't go up, and we're outsourcing more work. That's a concern, and that's why I raised it. You have a difference of opinion. I was elated that night, and it was a no-brainer when the issue was brought forward. We're going to save X amount of dollars. My concern is, at this point, how much are we going to have to put in to make it usable, to make it usable for the future? I mean, for more vehicles and more work. So, but if we have to, if we have to continue to pay private contractors and do the work we previously did ourselves, if we're going to have to continue to rehab that building, and it's, my only concern is that we're not going to be able to use the building to the point where it was intended to use. So I'd like, when you can, if I can get, those costs from you, Madam. And, as I think about this, I'm not even sure you know what the future costs are. So that'll be probably incumbent upon the city manager to get us that information. So that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I could just respond to a couple of comments. Councilor, I was appreciative of your support back in August, and I happen to think you made the right decision. The savings, I think is reported in the paper today that we were talking at the time, was about $400,000. And I think if you see in the report that I've provided to you, the savings is actually closer to $500,000. And if we wanted to go raise the roof, we could probably go raise the roof. I don't know if that's necessarily the best expenditure of funds. As you'll see, we in one of the pictures that we actually have seen, in one of the pictures I've given you, we actually have one of the vans that we use in the police department up on a lift. And they were working on it. It's just a happenstance that the staff member who was out there taking pictures that day caught them as they were doing work on that van. We do have a handful, and I mean a handful of vehicles that maybe won't be able to be serviced there, just as we have, and we may have to send that to the DPW, which our mechanic can go with the vehicle and service it there. We could send them over to the fire department and they could service it there. So we don't necessarily have to send it out to a private service, although that might make the most sense. It might make sense to do quite a bit of work out privately. Many communities, in fact, are doing that with their vehicles, not only in the police department, but other departments as well. And the other point I think that I would make on that is that it's not unusual for the police department to actually send out vehicles. If you look in the budget each year, the police department actually has a line for sending vehicles out to be serviced. There are certain services that we don't do in the police garage that we do have to send out. And I think that because it makes sense to do it that way, we don't have the expertise, we don't have the equipment. And it just wouldn't be cost effective. So I do think long term we might want to do that. But be that as it may, we're saving about $492,000 by going with this as opposed to the Meadowcroft site, which was the other bidder. And the other point I would make, and this is again, I'm having trouble, I guess, communicating this, and I apologize that, but the Commonwealth has laws regarding bidding. And we've complied with the bidding laws of the Commonwealth, that we don't get to pick and choose which laws we abide by. We have to go by what they say. And the Inspector General advised us on this and advised our purchasing agent how to proceed. We have to put out a bid package that is generic enough that anybody can bid on it. We can't cite it just to one particular bidder. And we did that, and we got 2 bids. And as you can see, the cheapest bidder, the least expensive bidder, was in fact this property. And I do think that this property, so it complies with the law, it saves us almost $500,000, and I think it's a better site in terms of its access to all portions of the city. It's closer to City Hall, and it also long-term has, and I've said this before, it has the most benefit for us in terms of future development because it's adjacent to the Lord Overpass and the Hamilton Canal project, and it's in a neighborhood that could certainly use a little bit more police presence. But I did put together a slideshow here for the councilors, and it's in your packet, but I think we might just want to kind of walk through it, and also for the public at home so that they can see that the building is far from the deplorable condition that has been described by some members of the council, and at least 1 or 2 news stories. But the pictures, I think, tell a different story. The mechanics area includes 5 working bays, 2 offices and storage bays, 2 bays have standard doors, 3 have oversized access doors. The end bay is a double bay, so you can get wider equipment in there. And 1 bay has 2 garage doors for front and rear drive-through, so they can come from Arch Street or from this particular parking area. 10-foot fences, that we've installed a 10-foot fence around the perimeter of the property, which was a request of the police department. As I indicated at the last meeting, the Meadowcroft property does have a fence around the back of the building and connects up with the front of the building, but the police had indicated when we were looking at leasing the property that they wanted a fence to go completely around the property. So that would have required additional costs out at Meadowcroft. The roof's been repaired and a full replacement's expected in the fall. We have installed an alarm and security system, computer and phone systems have all been done. Again, all of that would have had to be done at Meadowcroft as well. And the interior was pressure washed and painted. The office and storage area that we have for the mechanic and his staff or his helper. I think if you, I think people watching at home would be very impressed with the interior of this space. No criticism of my own mechanic, but I wish my own mechanic had an area quite this nice. Although I wouldn't want him to have to charge me for it. The lifts have been repaired and the electrical upgrades are ongoing. But you can see it's a very clean and bright space. That's a mechanic area, again, another picture of the mechanics area. You can see here, there's one of those vans that allows for the repair as well as all cars that we have. So clearly they can get underneath and do most of the work that they need to do on that vehicle. We do have a double bay area that the police asked be set aside for their motorcycles. Now that was a decision that I was supportive of. They could keep the motorcycles here on site as well. And this, in fact, is the area. It was just this bay. I know that it was in the newspaper that there wasn't any heat in the building, but it was just in this bay that there was some problems with the heating system. The rest of the building was, in fact, fully heated right from the get-go. We could move these motorcycles to the central fire station, and they could certainly be kept there in the Sallyport area if we needed to, and this could be made available for further maintenance areas. This is the storage area. Again, very clean, very orderly. It's certainly not in dire shape. Again, more storage. Again, I think the public looking at this would be confused as to what the problem seems to be. There's the office area. Again, quite nice. And again, much nicer than my own mechanic space. The sign shop is something that a decision was made by the police department, which right now controls the sign shop. They wanted this at that same location. And again, that's where a good portion of the money has gone. It would have had to have gone into the Meadowcroft site as well. But this is, they want their own bathroom, so we're putting that in. But we've done all the walls there. We've done the painting, divided spaces, the electrical, plumbing, HVAC upgrade, new hot water heaters installed. And it's all very, clean, orderly. Again, I'm not sure what the public would say if they saw this and saw that these seem to be considered dire conditions. I'm frankly at a loss. These are the new stairs. There was a problem with the stairs. They were too steep. It was an older building, but these are the new stairs that we've put in, and we're also putting in although it was used as a storage area for all of the service centers that have been operated here, and they carried equipment or supplies up, tires, mufflers, the like. Our staff asked that the stairs be replaced. We did that. They've also asked for a dumbwaiter or something of that sort. They wanted a cut through the wall, and we looked at that as an option, but we don't want to get into the business of cutting into the wall and going into having to do the site work. It is an urban area, as is the entire city, and we'd rather not actually dig into the soil there, not for any reason other than like where we put the Morey School or where we put the Stock Loser. There's going to be urban fill, so we'd rather not get into that. And it's expensive, and if they're just going up and down, they can carry stuff up and down the stairs, but they've asked for a dumbwaiter type of device, and we're going to be putting that in for them. This is the basement. And again, it's been fully cleaned. Everything has been taken out. The sump pump is down there, like almost every other property in the city. There's a little bit of drainage issue in the basements of properties. That's been fixed, and there's been a ventilation system installed. But you can see it's good, clean space. Again, another area, the lighting isn't quite as good there, but certainly adequate for keeping tires or auto parts once we put the shelving in. It's been in operation since 2010, November 2010. We're continuing to make improvements, and as I said earlier, it's centrally located, addresses all our needs, and it's cost effective. This is the values I talked about. We bought Arch Street for, it was assessed at $397. We bought it for $449, a little bit above the assessed value. We're putting $231,000 into it, which includes some of the things, Council, that you talked about with the moving and the cleanups, $680,000. Meadowcroft was assessed at $678, but they came, as you can see, they bid much higher. They were looking for quite a bit more from the city than the assessed value. We calculate that it would have been about $75,000, not much. It was basically move-in, but you would have had to put the fence, you would have had to put the security system, the alarm system, you would have had to have done some repairs on the roof. So you're up close to $1.2 million. So the difference is almost $500,000 there by going this route. So I think the pictures, pictures don't lie. They tell the story, and I think it's a good building. It's working well for us. It complies with bidding laws, and but I'd be happy to, keep the council up to date on it and get any further information the council may require.
Councilor Elliott, on this topic.
Thank you. That's good, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, because those pictures are dramatically different than when I visited. So that's a good thing. And I was there. I can tell you the day I was there. I'm not sure when you were there or if you visited even before that, but the conditions of the building were not as wonderful as they are now. I'm just glad the conditions are better and that it is cleaned up and it's tidy, and so that's a good. If nothing else, some significant improvements have been made. The basement does flood, as you know, so I'm not sure exactly what that can be used for. The basement can barely be used for anything, and that's half the square footage of the building. I know you keep mentioning bidding laws. Remember, I voted for this because I thought that there were significant savings. I'm not sure that's the case when we have to spend, is it $150,000 or $100,000 for a lift just to be able to access the downstairs? Emails are going on. You can either pave the place or you can get a dumbwaiter to use the basement, because that basement cannot be used. It looks nice, it looks clean, but it's not usable in its current condition. I don't know what the thought was. You'd have to take a whole side of the foundation out to access it and to do any type of storage. So I'm just raising these issues because, again, I voted for it. So, and again, to use that basement floor to take a foundation, that's thousands and thousands of dollars to use it. So when you say bid specs, I didn't see them, but if one of the requirements was for an oversized bay to work on this stuff, then these bids weren't in compliance. They didn't. This building did not meet that if we needed oversized bays to work on these vehicles. So of course I want to be in compliance with bidding laws, but if they didn't meet the bid specs, then they should have been thrown out. But I understand the point. As you mentioned at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, we were behind schedule. Chancellor Meehan wanted that building, or there were going to be penalties. So I understand the urgency to do that, but again, I'm just concerned about the cost that we will have to put into this building from here on out, and whether the cost benefit was worth it. That's all.
If I could just respond to a couple of points, Councilor, and I don't want to belabor the point. I was there before you, Councilor, and most of these pictures, I didn't take the pictures. The only picture that was taken since you've been there are the stairs. All of the other pictures and every other picture that we have taken by the staff person who was working on this were taken before you had been there, I believe. And as far as the oversized bay, that was not part. It's my recollection is that was not part of the bid package. Because again, we have very few vehicles that actually would require an oversized bay. Again, that's my recollection. I'll go back and check that. The downstairs is usable. And the dumbwaiter is only being put in there at the request of the police department, rather than, when it was used as a service center in the past, as I said, they used to carry the supplies and material up those steep stairs. We've replaced those steep stairs with stairs that are more gradual, but they've asked that it will be used for storage, as it has been used for decades as storage. So it is usable. It will be used, and we've fixed the sump pump that's down there because there is some drainage issues there. But again, I feel like I'm not going to be able to win everyone over on this issue, but again, I feel that we're comfortable with the decision that we made to go with the lowest bid, to save $500,000, and to get a building that serves our needs, and it will for the foreseeable future.
Anything else on this topic? Council Caulfield?
Believe me, I'm not going to belabor this issue, Mr. Manager. I've been through it enough. I believe your administration and the police department, Lieutenant Crowley was involved, and he was given the mission to go out and find suitable buildings for the police garage. And Lieutenant Crowley furnished the council with a report, and the report indicated inadequate parking, there wasn't enough height, and the building needed an awful lot of repairs. So you just indicated you had to put a new roof on that building. How much is that going to cost?
I believe the total cost of that is about $20,000.
$20,000? It's an 80,000 square foot building?
I believe that's the price that the DPW is
20,000?
They're going to do it themselves.
I could ask you to go back to that display there and show the van that's about maybe 3.5 feet off the ground. I don't know how the mechanic is going to service that van, but I didn't vote for the building, and I had good reasons. And did we save money? Time will tell. Time will tell. We didn't take a 21E test on that building. They changed the oil there for 50 years. 50 years. And you're not going to raise the height of the building, are you, Mr. Manager? You know why? I'll tell you why. In order to raise the height on 2 bays, you'd have to have a crane come in, remove 6 reinforced concrete panels, and then raise the wall. You know what happened to those panels once you pick them up after sitting there 50 years? They probably crumble. So when I heard that we had to raise the height of the roof, and Dave Blazon was at that podium, said, no, there's no problem. No. I've been around too long, and it's only going to be a matter of time to find out if we lost money or you saved money. And that neighborhood has fallen on hard times. And I really feel bad for the Lower Highlands neighborhood, because I used to live there. It was a great neighborhood. But that building and the way it's fenced in makes it even look worse. It looks like a building in the Bronx, New York, and I cannot say anything good about it. So that's my take on that. Thank you.
Anything else on this topic? Anything else on the communications? Councilman Donza?
Yes, regarding the communications on Livingston Ave, we discussed it to a great extent at the last meeting, but I would just like to say that of the 2 proposals that are being put forward here, I just want to be careful that we do what the residents of that area want. So even though I feel that the character of those neighborhoods would be protected by either the rezoning or the creation of a historic district, and I'd like to support those, I want to make sure that either of those, or both, when they're brought forth, that we have the support of the residents affected by the change. So whether it's changed in single family to a suburban single family, or to be included in a historic district, I would like a preponderance of the residents who own those properties to be in favor of what we're doing before it's brought forth to us. So that's my comment. I just want to assure that that gets done.
Thank you, Councilman Donza. Council Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I'm not going to belabor this issue either, because I know there's a motion coming forward. later on in the evening. Last Tuesday, it appeared to me that everyone was in shock and dismay that this house was going to be built on Livingston Avenue. I was shocked when I saw the foundation, and I asked you, Mr. Manager, was a street permit been given last Tuesday? And you really didn't know.
Didn't know.
You didn't know. Well, I know. It was given out May 3rd. It was signed off by 7 department heads: the city engineer, the police chief, fire chief, water utility, wastewater, and a few others. May 3rd, it was given out May 3rd. The night that we were discussing this, they already had that permit in their hands. And through the low sun, this subdivision was passed by the city engineer, accepted, October of 2010. Do you know that?
I do know that now, yes.
October. And we had residents on Livingston Avenue send emails to DPD in November, and they really couldn't give them an answer. They already knew the answer.
I believe they did tell them that it had been an approval not required lot, that it met the zoning of the city.
But the subdivision was approved in October of 2010, Mr. Manager. Why wasn't a red flag raised with this city council saying we have to address this issue?
They met the zoning of the
It didn't
city.
happen. Everyone knows it didn't happen.
Because
And I'm very troubled by that. And so are many, many residents in that neighborhood, so.
Anything else on the Communications Council, Elliot?
Yeah, on the same issue, we did receive a response, Mr. Manager, and from Mr. Bakey. And under number 5, council has asked how many of the properties established in residential neighborhoods are potentially susceptible to subdivision by A&R. The report indicates that by the summer, DPD can provide the council with an assessment of the potential for development using A&R subdivisions. Mr. Mayor, and you, Mr. Manager, myself, Mr. Bakey, we already know that there are subdivisions that are either in the works or in the process. What can we do to, what can we do to at least let abutters or abutters know that this is taking place? There's, I know there's a state law, and no disrespect to our legislators, but I don't know how many more developments will continue before that law is changed and with any luck altered, so it gives local communities, or at least the abutters, some notification process. What can we do to, again, I don't know if we can stop them, but they're continuing, and people watching this at home and that saw the debate are sending emails to us because they either must see surveying stakes or they must see people surveying their lot for something. So what do we, is there some notification process from the city that we can we, I don't want to circumvent the law, but I just can't get over the fact that there's no notification process that the city can do to abutters. I know there is an appeal period, but if there's no notification process, there's no way anyone can appeal it. So,
Mr. Manager?
Mr. Bakey, would you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, the very term approval not required reflects the action, or frankly lack thereof, that is necessary on the part of the city or its planning board in these types of subdivisions under the state law. So there isn't actually an action to notify people in advance of, because in fact, by definition, these are something that is exempt from the approval process. And all we're doing when we receive one is scrutinizing it to make sure that that indeed is the case. And if it is, there isn't an action taken. However, what we do is, as part of the planning board packets, before every meeting, we include a report for the planning board of the A&R activity since their previous report. And often there's nothing. but sometimes there's 2 or 3 A&R plans. And A&R plans, in addition to situations like what we are dealing with here with respect to Livingston Avenue, A&R plans are also used for simple things like when a neighbor wants to transfer a portion of their backyard to another neighbor and both lots are fully compliant. In either case, it's a simple process that they don't have to do a whole public hearing to just exchange 10 square feet of their backyard or something like that. So there are a lot of different reasons for A&R plans in addition to what is before us in this particular case. But those planning board packets have been made available on the city website for some time now and are available going forward. So that may be a way that the information is available to the public, although it does require a little bit of effort on people's part to look for it. But in the same manner that all of the information of materials, of projects that are before the planning board, those reports are made available on the websites as well. So that is a way people can find out about what has happened. And while there is an appeal period, in fact, the vast majority of the appeals that take place on A&R plans are actually appeals by the petitioner when the community or its planning board makes a claim that it is not an A&R plan. The petitioner will sometimes appeal, and that's actually the primary thing to appeal. I guess it is conceivable that abutters could appeal the granting or the agreement that a plan does not require approval under the subdivision control law, but that I'm not aware that there's much sort of a history of that type of thing happening. And again, in fact, it's mostly because petitioners are denied what they believe they have by right, that there is an appeal process.
Council Mercia?
I don't really have a comment, but I do have a motion on the agenda, and if we're going to talk about this motion, I don't know why I can't suspend the rules and move my motion forward. Everybody's saying everything about this issue, and yet...
Would you like to move to
Yes.
suspend the rules?
Yes,
to move
I
the
would.
motion forward? Seconded by Councilman Mendoza.
May I just had,
Counsel.
when we get a chance to add it, a follow-up question
Yeah,
for
Counsel
Mr.
Elliott.
Bakie. After the motion is fine, I don't want to...
Okay, all those in favor of suspending the rules to bring the motion forward, signify by saying aye. Opposed, vote. Motion by Council Mercia. City Council requests the city manager have the proper vote drawn to change the zoning on Livingston Avenue from traditional single-family to suburban single-family in order to increase the required minimum lot size and frontage requirements. Second by Council Mendoza. Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only reason I want to move it forward right now is because I think by that time the motions come up, I think Adam Bakie would probably be gone, and I'm thankful that he's still here because I just wanted to talk about this motion. And over the weekend between veterans events and grass cutting obligations, I had time to look over the zoning map. I know that we all received a zoning map on our desk, but I had one previous to this. I obtained one. And it dawned on me that there are quite a few areas in the city that have this TSF zone, the traditional single-family zone. This problem is more extensive and not just directed to Livingston Avenue and Harvard Street. This particular zoning takes in areas of Pawtucketville in the West Meadow Road area to Centerville's Beacon Street, 17th Streets, and South Lowell's Dayton Street, Roper Street, Commonwealth Avenue, and back to the Highlands, Laura Street, Hawthorne, all the way down from Canton Street and all the way down to Foster, Burnside, and ending at Cornell and Columbia Streets. And it hit me that I was under the belief that each neighborhood had a master plan, which was a development project that addresses concerns with traffic, building designs, and proposed zoning amendments. And I wondered, if so, how did this issue of ARN approval not required slip by? Or why were the zoning changes from TSF to SSF, which is suburban single family, not done way back then, so the square footage would have been increased? This motion or this issue should not be a knee-jerk reaction to what appears to be a desecration of a neighborhood street, but should be a motion that addresses this issue citywide. Therefore, I'd like to amend this motion and ask for a moratorium on building on lots in the TSF zone that require only 7,000 square feet, and ask that the proper department in charge thoroughly investigate, study, and implement a policy citywide that would alleviate the injustices that was caused by this action. Come back to this council in a timely manner and make right those areas of the city that are at risk of the same development nightmares that befell Livingston Avenue. The issue that seems important may be new growth, but not at the expense of desecrating the neighborhood. And I might further add that what was done on Livingston Avenue was not illegal, but was done within the law. But be that as it is, I move sometimes bad things happen and we wonder, oh my God, this is bad. But it's done and we can correct it and we can move forward and make it better for the city. And that's what the gist of this motion is as amended. I would move that we change the law and think about what's best for our neighborhood. And I'm asking here, all I'm asking for is a moratorium on building on TSF zones until we establish a policy, because I don't think it's in place. What was good 25 years ago is not good today, and we have to keep continually looking at it. And that's why I asked that we could suspend this so Adam Bakey could, weigh in and understand what the motion is all about.
Right, I understand the motion, I understand the logic behind it. I'm going to look to the solicitor.
I don't think it's fair just to change it on one or two streets. That's not going to do anything when you see the zoning map.
Madam Solicitor?
Right, the request for a moratorium, or looking into a moratorium, is a substantial deviation from, I guess, from the motion that's before the council tonight to act on. It may also create some issues independent of what has been discussed tonight. For example, it may not have the effect that you're anticipating. If someone has a legal right to subdivide now, they could still subdivide now, regardless of whether they obtain a building permit or not. In fact, it may, something like that, have an impact on spurring certain developers to go out and to do just that. It's something that could be looked at, but I guess the narrow issue before us right now is really the propriety of the motion itself. And last week there was a similar instance that came up, and I think the manager had stepped in and had suggested that he would take a look at the issue and prepare a report on it, and there wasn't anything really for the council at that point to vote on. Ultimately, for something of this nature, to have a moratorium on an entire zoning district in the city that may end up having a hardship on many people that are not present tonight and might have expenses that they've already committed. This is the exact kind of a change in a motion that could have an impact, financial and otherwise, on many members of the public. And I think it's something that people would have to have some sort of advance notice of on an agenda.
I don't buy a thing you said. I don't buy it. I don't know why we can't put a moratorium and stop this from happening because we're going to financially hurt someone that's going to desecrate a neighborhood.
What I'm saying, if I may, what I'm saying is not that you can't do it, it's just that there are rules in place for open meeting laws. They are designed to give the public notice, proper notice, as to what they can expect the council to be acting on at any given evening. To suggest that you're going to, tonight, have a moratorium on an entire zoning district in the city without giving the public a chance to come down and weigh in on it, there may very well be people out there who are not at all engaging in the type of issues that are
that want to make a quick buck at the expense of the neighborhoods. I think that's wrong.
I'm sorry, I didn't. I didn't catch what you just said.
It's unfair for us to put a moratorium on zoning throughout the city because we may infringe on their rights to make a buck and desecrate a neighborhood?
That's not at all what I said.
No, that's what I'm
twice.
interpreting it as.
Well, let me go over it one more time. Again, the motion that you're presenting, first of all, is not the motion that you came forward with. Secondly, it is a motion that could have a significant impact on the rights of others. Some of those issues that you're talking about might not even be resolved by the motion that you're putting forward. My point is that because of the open meeting law, first of all, it's a motion that isn't properly set forth, number one. And number two, it really does likely fall under the umbrella of a type of motion that doesn't give the public adequate notice in instances where their rights are affected. And again, they may be affected in ways that if somebody came to that mic 2 weeks from now and stated their case, you, after listening to them, may say, I agree. This moratorium may indeed be a problem, and I'm glad I've had an opportunity to listen to the public, which is exactly, again, why we have these requirements under the open meeting law. So you can do that.
So
you're
then let
afforded
me
an
ask you,
opportunity.
the motion that I originally made, is that illegal?
No, it's a motion that can be properly debated. It gave notice to the public, and it's before this body, and whatever this body decides.
So I couldn't add that particular neighborhood. Livingston Avenue is just one street.
Right.
It
You
affects...
you wanted to add the entire city council, which I think is out of order. That's just why I referred
Well,
it to the man.
I'm backing up then. I'm backing up, and I'm asking if the original motion stands, could I add that particular neighborhood, or I couldn't? Instead of just saying one street, Livingston Avenue, could I change the zone in that particular area
Well,
or neighborhood?
again, it doesn't give the public any notice that you're doing it or proposing to do it in any other area other than Livingston Ave is what it states.
Well, then I'll let the motion stand, and maybe I'll come back every single week until we get every single TSF zone changed to an SSF zone.
This is going to require a public hearing in any event. It's not going to happen this evening. It's going to require a public hearing anyway. We have a lot of hands up. Councilor Murphy, then Councilor Caulfield, Councilor Mendonça. And, I'm sorry, and Councilor Elliott was actually up next, but Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to add a few considerations to this, and that is that, a master plan is really about what could possibly happen in the future. That's the purpose of the plan, to have a plan in place. Obviously, it failed somewhat in this case, and that speaks, I think, to the importance of constantly updating it, which will happen fairly shortly this summer. But the trouble with singling out just a traditional single family as the issue, I think, is that it doesn't necessarily reflect the needs or the desires of every single neighborhood. My neighborhood, for example, has a far greater density, and to do away with that type of zoning would in effect zone people out of being able to either build or live in that community affordably in that neighborhood. So there are problems with just singling out that zone. It's not quite the fact that the zone is such on Livingston Ave. It's that it doesn't entirely meet up with what is desired there now. And so I would hesitate to have this broad look at the traditional single family, where it does make sense in some neighborhoods, because we are in fact a city, and we don't want to make this unaffordable for people to live in, and people do have property rights in those places. So I would really be hesitant to have such a broad view, but I think that it's really important to look at over the summer and in the coming fall, what exactly it is we would like to see in those neighborhoods, and get as much community participation in those discussions so that we don't have this problem in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Once again, we wouldn't be discussing this issue if we were informed back in October 20th, and maybe the council subcommittee on zoning would have convened meetings, maybe November, December, January, and we were on top of this issue right off the bat. Madam Solicitor, put your legal cap on, because under Robert's Rules of Order, I'm allowed to bring in a substitute motion. And I already prepared this motion today. And Councilor Mercier's motion is noble, but I'm going a step further. And here's the motion, Mr. Mayor. I request that the City Council Subcommittee on Zoning convene a meeting as soon as possible to address the zoning bylaws in certain neighborhoods in the city of Lowell. Also, the City Council place a moratorium on building lots less than 10,000 square feet until the City Council Subcommittee on Zoning presents to the full council recommendations and amendments.
That is way out of order, Councilor Caulfield.
Why?
Because it is. Trust me, it's out of order. If you want to file that next week, be my guest. But tonight, it's out of order.
Are you saying I can't bring this substitute
You
motion in?
You cannot bring it up. That's what I'm saying. You cannot.
Wait a minute. Clarify your ruling.
We'll ask the city solicitor. You're going, again, citywide. You are completely out of order, and in my opinion...
This problem is citywide, Mr. Mayor.
This problem...
It's not just on Livingston Avenue
is on Livingston
or Harvard
Avenue,
Street.
Councilor, and again, I'm going to recognize Councilor Mendonça because you're out of order. Councilor Mendonça.
To expand on my earlier comments,
Boy.
I just want to be careful as we move forward with this, with these proposed solutions. I certainly want to consider them. We have to be careful if we get too broad that we might hurt some people who have the right to do things at the moment. And by precluding them from doing so, I mean, that could have negative economic impacts. And it could be something that the neighbors have no problem with. So again, I want to be careful that whatever solution we come up with, that it's not more onerous than the original injustice. So again, I want to make sure that if we do change the zoning, or we do create a historic district, that the people contained in those areas support it. If they're going to be against it, then we're wasting our time.
Right. This does require a public hearing. Councilor
Right.
Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess a simple question is why can't we just have a notification process? There's an appeal process. Is there any reason why when we receive a subdivision plan, we being planning development, we don't notify the neighbors? I mean, we have so many open meeting laws. We have to go through public hearing processes. Everything needs a public discussion, which is, I completely agree. But on this, something that is so central to people's property rights, and I do think it's a property right as well, it can be done in the middle of the night, and there's an appeal process, and nobody is going to know about it. That is a major flaw in the law, and for us to sit back and do nothing, I just can't get over it. I mean, we know there's a problem. We know that it's occurring now. We know it's going to continue to occur. We're in the middle of a construction season, which is when this will take place, and we're saying maybe we're going to get an idea of, we'll get an assessment by the summer. We have to wait for the state legislature to pass a law amending the approval not required, and we know there's a problem. And I think we all supported the motions last week. We all agree that there's a problem, but we're going to leave here saying there's we can't change it, or there's not much that we can do, and there'll be at this point, I think to some degree we fail the people we're trying to represent by saying there's nothing we can do. It's going to take place. I don't see that as our role. I'm not, none of us do, but it's not our role. It's to listen to our constituents and do something about it. And why can't we just notify the abutters? At least they will know. I think that was probably the most disconcerting issue that I heard from the neighbors on Livingston Street. One day, a bulldozer showed up, and there was a foundation. And that is just, on all levels, fundamentally wrong.
Madam Solicitor?
Sure. I guess the short answer is we could certainly explore and speedily implement, if appropriate, a notification process for these plans as they come forward, which in essence would be that anytime somebody comes forward with an A&R plan, that the petitioner, as a local ordinance, would need to notify people. The problem, however, in doing all of that is that to what end? You can notify the abutters. The abutters can come in and they can talk to city officials. However, the reality is, if somebody is entitled to an A&R plan, then it's not your typical notification process where you open things up to the public for the purpose of getting information back and then being able to make a decision based on that information. Typically in zoning, petitioners come forward. Some may approach the zoning board, have objections, specific objections, whether it be parking or a detriment to the neighborhood, which is certainly the case in this particular project. And then there's some ability to act. Part of the problem here is that the city lacks that ability to act. The best way to go about it is essentially what the council is already looking at doing, and that is by attacking these types of problems on an individual basis in neighborhoods and in areas where you then see a problem, in areas where certain types of zoning requirements don't make sense because you are going to end up destroying the look, quality, and integrity and the aesthetics of a particular neighborhood, which is exactly, obviously, what the council immediately started to do, was to look at whether it's expanding a historic district or taking another look at our zoning and expanding that. So it's something that could be explored, but again, to what end is really the question, and for what purpose. I don't know if that helps address that, but.
Well, I understand it, but it doesn't make it any better. I mean, there's an appeal process which it's dysfunctional.
Right.
How can you appeal something that you don't know about? I mean, it's probably one of the worst laws that I have ever read, because there's an appeal process, but there's no notification process. Even if there is nothing that the abutter can do, which, again, doesn't make sense to me, but I think we need to do something and provide some redress immediately, not in a month, not at the end of the summer, not, October now, because we know there's at least one project in Belvedere that plans have been submitted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I forget which councilor said it last week. Every time we amend and we try to tighten up the zoning laws, developers find a way to shoehorn these homes or projects onto smaller lots, and it's frustrating. This one on Livingston Ave, the front door faces the side yard lot line. How is that permissible? That makes no sense to me. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Council Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the fundamental flaws we have is that the appeal process is not for the benefit of the neighbors or the neighborhood. And it's clear here that, as Mr. Backey explained to us last week, is that there really is not much of an appeal. It's frontage, I think side yard setback. If we want to affect the change here, we need to do it in our own zoning. And I think that we're not going to get through the entire city, and I agree that it doesn't necessarily make sense to just get rid of one type of zoning throughout the citywide. But if we maybe have some direction as to where we should start, and this looks like an appropriate place to start, Mr. Manager, in terms of revisiting our zoning. And the difficulty is that they're not making any more land, and it's going to be more and more difficult to manage this from where we're sitting. And we're handcuffed by state law to some degree. Maybe we can affect change, but to some degree, we have to continue to revisit this. I think we need to, get obviously input from DPD, but do this in a way that's meaningful and respectful to the neighborhoods, but also makes sense to the neighborhoods in terms of not all neighborhoods are the same, not all TSFs are the same. I think that we can do that, get feedback from the neighbors in each neighborhood, and bring this forward maybe on a per zone basis. Start with where we see the most critical issues, and this is obviously one, or we wouldn't be discussing it. So I think that maybe if we bring it forward in that respect and not wait till it, later in the summer when we have the whole city mapped out or determine where we think the problems are, I think we can at least start affecting change. To get notice in October that a plan had been filed wouldn't have done us any good here on the council. So I think the difficulty here is that this whole idea of an appeal process really is fool's gold. There is no real appeal here for residents, and it's really for the property owner themselves to be able to go and get that A&R. So I think that we need to get to the root of the problem is in tighten up our zoning. And I don't think when we voted on the zoning 5 years ago that we anticipated someone would subdivide that lot in that beautiful street and put this house in. And there are plenty of other streets where we all drive by every day that I'm sure that the same situation can arise. But I think we can take a more analytical approach and maybe reasoned approach of starting with this particular zone and look at the different neighborhoods and at least start addressing the problem systematically and not wait to bring it in as a whole. Thank you.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, at least tonight we learned that the word moratorium is an unjust word which is illegal and we can't do that. And I don't want to violate the law, but I thought maybe we could have put a hold on it. What?
Yes, I know what you're going to say, yes.
Just to be clear, it's not that a moratorium in and of itself is something that we can't do. It's just that we'd have to give people notice if that's the type of thing that we were going to pursue.
You and Councilor Caulfield can file the joint motion for the next
That's what I
meeting.
plan on doing, Mr. Mayor.
That's right, I know you are.
June
But again, it's not properly before us this evening.
Oh, I see. Okay, then, we shall do that, Councilor Caulfield. Don't give up the ship.
We'll have two votes.
Well, but you...
All I'm trying to do is protect,
Okay,
all I'm doing
and
is trying to protect our position.
And I didn't want to put a clean sweep over the city and get rid of and eliminate traditional single-family zoning. I never, ever said that.
You said a moratorium.
I said it's...
Right.
I said it's quite evident that TSF zone doesn't just pertain to that one particular area or street. And looking at the zoning map, it's quite widespread. Maybe in Patrick Murphy's neighborhood, they would appreciate that because it's very dense. I understand that. If you know what I said we would refer it to the proper department in charge to thoroughly investigate, study, and implement a policy citywide. Didn't mean that I would make it that change citywide, but we would look at it citywide. Maybe some neighborhoods are adaptable to what it is. I understand that. I never said we're going to do a widespread sweep. But be that as it may, since I do have a motion on the agenda, could we just revert back to the original motion
Yes,
and
that's what's before us, yes.
make one change anyways to help the street out anyhow? Maybe we could do that. And then we'll make a motion at another time to give people fair warning.
So you're not amending the motion?
No, I'm not amending it now because I
We do have a motion,
probably-
it has been seconded. Is there any
We
further
erase it?
discussion?
I'll
we
second
just-
that motion.
No, it was seconded already.
We'll just do the
Correct.
original motion then.
Okay. Any further discussion on the original
We
motion?
learned a lot tonight, though. We actually did. That's a good thing. It's all right.
Yes, Councilor Caulfield.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question through you to the solicitor. I want a legal opinion in writing, Robert's Rules of Order, on substitute motions. And I would expect that for the next meeting or
Sure.
probably
The-
before then. Because
I mean,
Robert's
under
Rules of Order,
Robert's
you're
rules-
allowed to bring in a substitute motion
You
of a
can.
colleague.
You can. However, again, there has to be a balance, and they have to coincide with what our open meeting laws
It was
state.
germane to the issue. But
Well,
I'll wait
it's
for your legal
substantively-
opinion in writing, okay?
That's fine.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Councilor Elliott.
You still on the communications?
Yes, going back to communication.
This was a communication, not to the entire council, it was a communication from the manager to me. So, I presume it can be covered under communications, but Mr. Manager, this is relative to the resumes when you responded to my request. My assumption from that meeting was that you were going to provide the resumes to us, and you indicated that moving forward, you were going to provide applicants' resumes to us. I don't know, that wasn't my thought. I thought we were going to get those resumes. That was the intent that was brought up, and quite frankly, that was the vote that was taken quite some time ago. So where you indicate in your email that past efforts, you're looking into past efforts and researching the vote that was taken, I don't believe that's within your authority. I think that a vote that was taken prior to your tenure as a city manager is still in effect, similar to other votes that were taken effect, and until that another vote is taken that changes that policy is in place. So I'm not sure what you're researching. I know you indicate privacy issues, but it has been a practice, and I think it should continue. And I think when the council takes a vote, it's your responsibility to carry through on those votes.
And that's exactly what I'm researching is the vote.
Okay, so while you're researching your vote, again, in my opinion, you don't have the authority not to carry through on what policy was put in place.
Once I get that vote, understand the parameters of that vote, then I'll act to be in compliance with that vote.
But the parameters that all the information, all the resumes are provided to the city council and to the public. I don't know what the big issue is, Mr. Manager.
And
I
that's
really don't.
And that's what I'm trying to understand the vote, because
I'm a little more concerned that you don't want to release this information to the public
I really,
now.
as you know, I really don't want to release the information for a variety of reasons, including what impact it's going to have upon the people who will apply, and it's also going to have an impact on the privacy of certain individuals. And again, I have some recollection of discussions of this matter when I first became city manager, and I'm going back and I'm understanding that, and I'm understanding the votes and the discussions that took place prior to that, so that I can be in compliance with the vote of the vote, if any, of the council, and then I can abide by that and make other further recommendations, perhaps, to the council on how this should be handled in the future. So if you give me just another couple of weeks, I hope to have that for you.
Well, I would like the resumes in this week's packet, and while you're doing your research, then you can ponder your vote. But under this form of government, under the planning form of government, responsibility is you to execute what we implement. And I think that if you don't do that, then you're in violation of what the charter says. And I think it's pretty clearly stated. Similarly, when we hear, Section 106, that councilors are overstepping their bounds. So,
that's exactly what we want to get to, is that we're all in compliance with the charter.
Great. So I'll look forward to those resumes.
Again, based upon the review of that, and then I'll work with the council.
Thank you. Anything else on the communication? I know we were talking about doing the presentation of the budget, which we'd like to get to. I just don't know if we should go into the public hearing and then come back to the presentation, since the public hearing was scheduled for 7. Okay, we'll come back, if it's okay with my colleagues, we'll come back to the presentation on the FY12 budget process, go through that, set a budget hearing, and accept the communication. So let me go into the public hearing. In City Council vote approving the 2011 re-precincting plan for the City of Lowell. Public hearing is now open for those wishing to speak in favor. For those wishing to speak in favor, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Approval by Councilor Rita Mercia, seconded by Councilor Martin. Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did comment on this when it was first presented to the council. I thought it was a good piece of work, and I think it's been pretty carefully done. However, that being said, there are people in the city whose place of voting will change as a result of this. And I think, Mr. Manager, there was some brief discussion when this first came up about there being some attempt to notify the people whose polling place is going to change? Is that something we are trying to do, or is it too difficult to?
I'd ask Mr. Bakey to.
It's actually a multi-step notification process. After the discussion at the council meeting earlier in the month, when this was referred to hearing at the request of the council, we were able to extract from our GIS system a listing of addresses whose precinct will change, as well as correspond that to the polling places. And we posted that information on the city website. So that's been available on the website since basically a couple days after that last discussion. That is not the formal notification process because, in fact, nobody's precinct has yet changed until the council actually takes action this evening. The elections office is then required, once the precincts actually are changed, the elections office is required to notify everyone directly whose polling place has changed as a result of that, whether they change as a result of re-precincting or because for some other reason the city relocates a polling place. They all have to be notified, and the elections office will take care of that between when these new precincts go into effect and when the first election that will be subject to them happens. There is a process after this. If the council approves this evening, it still needs to be submitted to the Secretary of State's office for a final approval before it's official. And the first election that these new precincts would actually take effect will be the first election in 2012. So the primary and the general election for the local election this fall will still be under the old wards and precincts. It would only be in the first election of 2012, which is likely the Republican presidential primary, would be subject to these new precinct locations. We have made a very concerted effort, though, in drawing these proposed lines to do our best to minimize the disruption for people. And by our estimate, just based on parcel addresses, many of which are not even residential, 6% of the parcels in the city are going to have a new precinct as a result of this, but only about 3% will actually have a new polling place, because in many cases, multiple precincts vote in the same polling location. You may have to go to the other side of the table or the other side of the room, but you won't have to go to a new building. And we made we really tried very, very hard in locating these lines to make sure that where there was a necessity due to population shifts to move people, we tried as hard as we could to move people in a way that they would retain the same polling location even if they moved to a new precinct. And I think, again, we've been fairly successful at doing that. Many of the people who actually are moving, a big chunk of them are the folks who live in Centerville, who for the last 10 years have voted downtown because of a quirk in the population and after the 2000 census that required us to extend the downtown precinct across the river. We've actually managed to put all of those people back in Centerville precincts as a result of the population shifts this time around. That's probably the single biggest change of actual polling locations that's going to take place anywhere in the city.
Thank you. You all set, Council Martin?
Well, no, I appreciate the effort, and it's 3% of the parcels, but that is some impact. So, I mean, I know for where I used to live, my location would change under this, and there are other places. I agree that, you know, if it's 3% of the locations in the city, that's pretty good given the census parameters and everything else that we need to work within. So again, I'm very complimentary of the work and plan to support the proposal, but just wanted folks to be aware that some people will have to shift to a polling location, but not this year. It'll be starting 2012. So
thank you.
Thanks.
Councilman Donza?
Yes, I was especially sensitive to one area of the city, and that being Ward 10-3. And for years, I've had complaints of people who go out their front door and see a polling location that they could not vote at. They had to drive across the city to the VFW in order to vote. So the one positive thing about this is that more of that area along Central Street up to Gorham Street is now included in 10-3. However, there is a small piece that is now moving to 10-2, which would be Lawrence Street Firehouse. And I didn't realize that the names were put up on the website. Otherwise, I would have gone there and looked. I had asked for the list of names of those that changed, but so I wasn't sure how many of these residences along Central Street we're going to have to change to, if any, to Lawrence Street. Again, when the polling location is virtually next door to them. That was my only concern with the plan. I myself have to move to a new precinct, actually the one I used to live at. I'm one of the small portions of Pawtuckaville that gets moved from 6-3 to 6-2. So I'll be voting at a new location starting in 2012. But I did want to see if there's any possibility to make sure that that stretch of Central Street was able to vote at 10-3, which they can see from their homes. It's possible they still are, but I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on this issue? We have a motion that's been seconded. Roll call.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield? Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
No.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
8 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you. Going back to the city manager's part of the agenda under communication, presentation on the FY12 budget process. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, this is a response to a motion that was filed by Councilor Murphy asking for an explanation of the budget process and the more elaboration upon the possibilities for citizen input, and also tied in with requests regarding the budget document itself and a number of the inclusion of information that the council would find helpful as they go through the budget process, the budget consideration. So if I may, I just have a very brief presentation as to the process that we've used this year, so that that's everyone is aware of that, and also lays out some information regarding the next steps in this process. So if I may, as I've pointed out, even as recently as the subcommittee meeting a couple of weeks ago, the budget process itself, budget preparation, is constantly ongoing. And we're in the middle of implementing FY12 now. We just completed, closed out the books in FY11. FY10, we're in FY11, we're preparing FY12, and we're actually already preparing budgets for FY13 through FY16. So it's a constantly ongoing process, but what we do certainly each year is focus upon the upcoming budget and the attention that must be paid to that. So, and that really is starting in January and runs through June when the City Council takes their votes. In February, all the department heads, as I indicate here, were asked to develop their budgets. And new this year is they also, in accordance with the intent of the administration, but also the feedback from the City Council with motions that have been made and approved regarding performance considerations within the budget. We also asked department heads to work to develop workload and performance indicators for submission. So it's a much more robust document that doesn't tell you just what is spent, but tells you what in fact is achieved as a result of that. From March to May, we have discussions with department heads regarding those indicators, but also regarding their actual requests to get an understanding of what their actual budget needs are. What we generally do too, and we did it in a more formal process this year, is partly as a response to the motion, but also in our efforts to get out and provide information to the citizens. We've been meeting with myself and Mr. Moses, as well as Mr. Marchand has attended a number of these. We've been meeting with the neighborhood groups to get public input, to provide them with information and get public input regarding the budget. During that period of time, I've attended 6 neighborhood meetings. We're making a presentation to the Lowell plan, the business organizations in the city. We've made several cable TV appearances between April and June to discuss the budget and receive citizen input. The discussion points that we've been focusing on are to give not just a bunch of numbers, but instead to give them some, and it's essentially the presentation that I gave to the subcommittee a couple of weeks ago, to give some context and some trends as to the finances of the city, certainly focusing on declining state aid, fixed cost increases, the drawdown of the reserves during the early 2000s, actions taken during the previous budget so that the citizens have an understanding of how we got to where we are today, and then what we're going to be doing in terms of developing the FY12 budget. We've also provided them with an overview of the budget document itself, and then importantly, the question always put is, what about adding more in terms of services, or what about reducing taxes, or although I must say that that was a relatively minor topic of discussion by the citizens that I spoke to at the various neighborhood groups. Mostly they were looking for can we expand upon certain services that we offer. Feedback overall was very positive. I will tell you that. Obviously that's coming from me, but I think if you speak to the neighborhood organizations, they will tell you the same. As far as FY12 goes, one of the messages certainly that we pointed out is we do face challenges in the upcoming year. We have, we did get $7.1 million more for school aid, as I pointed out to the subcommittee. We did lose we are losing $1.5 million in unrestricted aid. We have, in looking at FY12, we are looking at holding the excess levy capacity at $4.9 million in accordance with the policies that we have here, and in particular with the strategic goals and objectives that the City Council worked with the administration on and endorsed. We do have challenges, though, in terms of snow and ice. We have a $2.8 million deficit that we have to cover in fiscal year 12, carried over from fiscal year 11. We are looking at $300,000 increase in health insurance, which actually is very good compared to where we've been the last few years, but that was in large part due to the work that we did with the employees. The budget document itself, and this I think is notable, and it's in line with what the number of city councilors have asked us to do, and it's in line with what we've been trying to do in the administration, is to provide a much more robust document that gives much more information than just dollars and cents, that actually gives people a full understanding of city government, also in how we use resources. So the expanded narrative piece, so people can read about what exactly is going on within the budget. There's detail on revenues and expenditures. There isn't just, outlining expenditures. We also give a background on where the revenue changes are taking place. Councilor Murphy asked for the TIFs and tax policy. So we're giving there is a discussion on the status of those financial policies, particularly related to those two issues. What's more in the way of department descriptions and org charts? That was a concern I had from the get-go upon becoming city manager. Most communities, you can understand the way they operate and by the way they're organized. And budget documents are where those organizational charts are typically put. That did not exist here in the city. We have included that, and that will certainly be included in FY12 as well. Budget statements. We've asked all the department heads to actually work with us on descriptions of how the department budget has changed since FY11. And then what are the accomplishments? What have they achieved during fiscal year 11 that can feed into the workload indicators and the performance indicators for FY12? This is an example of the organizational chart. This is the entire city government, but within each category, you'll have a breakdown of additional divisions within, for instance, planning and development, or within the finance area, within each office. So finance breaks down into certainly treasurer, assessor, purchasing, HR, but then within each division in treasurer, you'll see the breakout of collections and treasurer functions and the staffing that goes with that. The staffing information, again, not just giving names, but also showing the actual staffing patterns and how these have changed over time. And as it's been clear to the council as well as the public, these have gone down dramatically. the indicators and outputs for each department that I've talked about. And then also, and I think this is certainly in line with what Councilor Dakota and Councilor Mendonça and Councilor Murphy have asked for in terms of how does it tie in with our strategic plan? What are the strategic goals coming out of each department? So that will be included as well. This gives you some sense. For councilors who've been here a while, you know that for the longest time, the budget was simply put in dollars and cents format. This gives quite a bit more information that I think that you will find informative. I know I find it informative as city manager to see what departments are looking to achieve and what they are achieving, and certainly the public. The feedback that we get from the public is very positive on the types of information that to help them understand where their money is going. In terms of a approval timeline, we're making this presentation tonight, and I asked the City Council to set a public hearing for June 14th to take up the budget vote. I would also ask that we schedule a meeting for June 9th, at which time I will make a full presentation of the budget to the council. We will break it down, certainly in accordance with the Uniform Municipal Accounting System, so that we break down into the functional categories of general government, public safety, public works, health and human services. We'll also go into detail on revenues and talk about some forecasts that we have, because I think that's an important part of the budget document as well, is looking to the out years of what changes we see taking place. And at that time, the council can take their vote of receipt of the budget document itself. But the actual, I'm looking for the public hearing on June 14th and hopefully a city council vote of adoption at that time. That concludes the presentation. As I said, it was very short, but I wanted to let the public know how the budget process is working, certainly the city council, and I think it will be a very informative process this year, and for all involved, the council, the administration, and the public.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any questions from the council? Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When are we going to receive the budget?
You'll receive it on June 9th.
June 9th?
Yes.
A week before the public hearing?
That's correct.
You can't give it to us sooner?
If I can get it out sooner, I will. We're still putting the finishing touches on. The Senate hasn't voted or the conference committee hasn't voted the budget yet at the state, but we can work off of the numbers that we have.
We have to vote to the receipt of the budget. I mean, we can't vote. We don't have the budget before us.
Correct. And according to the presentation, we're going to get that on June 9th, which is a Thursday, by the way. Which is a Thursday.
And I would not look for a vote that night. I would look for the vote on the 14th.
Now, I asked this question, and certainly I'll look in the budget. Any employees receiving pay raises?
There are no cost of living raises in the budget.
Merit raises?
There are nothing for merit. There are step increases in accordance with contract, existing collective bargaining agreements and ordinances. But there are no further raises.
Councilman Mendonça.
Through the mayor to the clerk, do we need to take any action to schedule that June 9th meeting at this time?
No. It is a special meeting. Yeah, probably. I want to make sure it's in order, Madam Solicitor. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Okay. So the motion by Councilman Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Broderick, that we schedule a special meeting of the Council of the Whole on June 9th to take up the FY12 budget. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Manager, assuming that we're going to vote to accept it, will it also be put online Thursday evening as well?
Yes, it will be.
So it is going to be fairly short notice to give people at home an opportunity to review it as well. Thank you.
Right. The vote on June 9th would be a vote to receive the budget. Now, can we Madam Solicitor, can we actually set the public hearing tonight, or we have to wait till the 9th?
You could certainly set the public hearing tonight.
We can set the public, so would you amend your motion to include the public hearing for June 14th?
Certainly.
Thank you, Councilman Mendonça.
Time.
Time? 6:30, 6:30? Or?
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock.
You have a council meeting at 6:30. So you're either going to do it before the meeting or at the conclusion of the meeting, or both.
Before. 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
You're talking about the June 9th? We don't have a,
No,
June
June
14th.
14th,
14th.
at 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, public hearing. Is that okay with my colleagues?
What time is June 9th?
It's up to the council. We can do it at 6, 6:30.
Yes.
Accepting it, there'll be
See-
a full presentation of the department heads will be here. We'll make a full presentation so that it isn't, we're not stuck doing the entire budget on the city council meeting. So the idea is to have a night of discussion, a presentation, discussion, and then the public hearing to get public input based upon what they've heard on June 9th and give input to the council in consideration of by the council.
Counselor Elliott?
I could be wrong. I thought we had to accept it and give the public an opportunity to look at it and respond before we before we can deliberate at all whatsoever. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to make sure, we're talking a lot about open meeting rules, but I thought we had to accept it, make it available to the public, and then deliberate.
Well, you would be deliberating on the 14th. All that's happening on the 9th would be a presentation, period. And just like with any sort of a public hearing on, albeit usually issues that are less time-consuming than the budget, the council first will get a presentation, say, from the manager, then the mayor would open it up to a public hearing to hear from the public. What would be happening here is that on the 9th, the council will be accepting the budget, as it typically does. And tonight, you could establish, so the public knows, when the public hearing is going to be, on the 14th. The presentation takes place on the 9th, and then there's an open public hearing on the 14th.
Okay. I thought the manager said that department heads were going to be here to make presentations and answer questions, and I didn't think that would be appropriate at that time.
That's all part of the manager's presentation on the budget, and any questions that the council might have of the staff itself would take place then. But as far as the actual public hearing, that would be on the 14th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Caulfield?
Mr. Mayor, clarification. I want to know when the council is going to be physically presented the budget. What date?
June 9th.
June 9th.
June 9th.
Correct.
And I just want to know
At these
what time.
chambers.
In these chambers.
And Counselor Mercy would like to know what time?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
On the 9th,
On the
5 on the 14th.
And 5 o'clock on the 14th for the public hearing.
Yep.
And Counselor Madon's is okay with that motion being? Counselor Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that there's a separate day for the presentation of departmental budgets and that sort of thing. But I would just request both the administration and the council itself to limit the number of items on the 14th, because what happened last year was we had well over a dozen different items on the council side of things and as well as the administrative side of things. So to limit the number of items that come up, so that if we do have to go over past the regularly scheduled meeting, that we have sufficient time.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else on the motion? Roll call on the motion?
Yeah. Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Broderick,
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Motion to accept the communications placed on file by Counselor Elliott, seconded by Counselor Dakota. All those in favor, signify.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Counselor Murphy, excuse me.
I still have an item under communications.
Okay.
We did receive a report on visible recyclables on a potential ordinance. I won't discuss that now, but perhaps we could just refer that to the environmental subcommittee for further discussion.
The environmental?
Yes, yeah.
subcommittee?
What's the motion again? To refer
To
the...
refer this report for further discussion at the environmental subcommittee.
Motion by Counselor Murphy, second by Counselor Mendonça to refer the report to the environmental subcommittee. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Counselor Elliott?
We're still under communications?
Yes.
We did receive a report from the manager following a request from the Finance Subcommittee on hires, so if I could just have that report forwarded to the Finance Subcommittee for our next meeting. I'm not sure when that is, but
Okay. Motion by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Mendonça to refer the hiring report to the Finance Subcommittee. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Okay, we have a motion before us to accept the communications placed on file. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Continuing on with the city manager's portion of the agenda, we have a vote in city council authorizing the city manager to execute a license agreement between the city of Lowell and Camila LLC doing business as Reservations Restaurant for use of a portion of the city property adjacent to the premises at 179 Central Street, Lowell, for the purpose of sidewalk seating. Whereas Camila LLC doing business as Reservations Restaurant desires to use a portion of the city property adjacent to the premises at 179 Central Street, Lowell, for the purpose of sidewalk seating. And whereas on May 9, 2000, an ordinance was adopted by the city council which added Section 17-29 entitled Sidewalk Seating, establishing certain regulations for seasonal temporary sidewalk seating pertinent and contiguous to a restaurant facility. And whereas on December 23, 2008, the city council amended the code and Section 1729 entitled Sidewalk Seating is now referenced to Section 243-23. And whereas the city desires to support the efforts of Camila LLC doing business as Reservations Restaurant in its endeavor to assist in stimulation of the downtown area, now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the city manager is hereby authorized to execute a license agreement between the City of Lowell and Camila LLC doing business as Reservations Restaurant for use of a portion of city property adjacent to the premises at 179 Central Street for the purposes of sidewalk seating. Said license shall be predicated upon adequate insurance coverage, which coverage shall be kept in force so long as the license agreement continues under this license. In the event that said insurance coverage shall be canceled or lapses without being renewed or replaced, then said license hereunder shall be forthwith terminated and licensee shall have to cease and desist. Said license shall be in accordance with the form or substantially the form attached hereto. There's no objection. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager to execute license agreement between the City of Lowell and Camila LLC doing business as Reservations Restaurant for use of a portion of city property adjacent to the premises at 179 Central Street for the purpose of sidewalk seating.
Move approval.
Approval by Councilor Mercy, seconded by Councilor Dakota. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor
Yes.
Caulfield? Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next item in City Council vote to fund final cost of one last fuel delivery police department ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $22,000 be transferred from account number 021041515-515000 as more fully described in attachment A to account number 021041551-542300 as more fully described in attachment A. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Second reading by title. In City Council, order to fund final cost of one last fuel delivery for police department ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $22,000 be transferred. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Elliott.
I just had a quick question. We're transferring 22,000, Mr. Manager. How much did we spend throughout the year? Excuse me.
We believe the line item, we don't have the line item, the budget right in front of us. We believe the line item for that is about $160,000. The issue there, as everyone knows, is the price of gasoline has gone up, and so they've had to spend more for gasoline.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Mendonça?
Just to have, through the mayor to the manager, just to confirm, all we're doing is moving money from one police budget account number to another police budget account number.
That's correct.
Okay.
What's the wish of the council? Motion to approve by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Murphy. Roll call.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor
Yes.
Caulfield? Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next item, we have a resolution, in City Council resolution supporting the passage of Senate Bills number 1008, the Land Use Partnership Act, also known as LUPA, and number 1019, the Comprehensive Land Use Reform and Partnership Act. whereas Senate Bills number 1008 and number 1019 would establish a clear link between long-range municipal, regional, and statewide land use and development planning with the tools that are employed by local governments to regulate land use development, whereas both bills will help reform many of the specific flaws in the state's current land use statutes, which is reasonable to all interested with land development, and whereas these include reforms of approval not required subdivision control exemptions, zoning and plan freezes, appeal procedures, and streamlining of the process for local enactment of zoning bylaws, and whereas the bills would then provide the municipalities with additional tools to help implement their growth management visions, including explicit authorization for form-based zoning codes, transfer of development rights, the ability to zone for the protection of natural resources, development impact fees, and other tools to help manage rates of growth and development. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the City Council of the City of Lowell by this resolution supports Senate Bill number 1008, the Land Use Partnership Act, and Senate Bill 1019, the Comprehensive Land Use Reform and Partnership Act. This resolution adopted by the City Council of the City of Lowell on the 31st day of May 2011. Second reading by title in City Council resolution supporting the passage of Senate Bills number 1008 and the Land Use Partnership Act, and number 1019, the Comprehensive Land Use Reform and Partnership Act.
Move for approval.
Move for approval by Council Caulfield, second by Council Broderick. Any discussion? Council Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to support this because there are apparently a lot of mistakes in the state zoning code, because this is one of the most comprehensive documents. And I have to say, I didn't read the whole thing. I mean, there are hundreds, at least over 100 pages of zoning changes, amendments, language. Mr. Bakey, and it includes everything from greenhouse gases, development impact fees, solar fields, affordable housing. My concern is this going to pass? And it came to us as a result of Mr. Bakey testifying on approval not required. Considering there are so many issues, there's so many, I think, controversial issues, I don't know if there can be any consensus on this, and if it does have any chance of passing. Approval not required, Mr. Bakey, is it, I was presuming that there's going to be some specific language, but it seems like it's incorporated into subdivisions and things of that nature, notification process. But I think what we were interested in, as well as all of these, is how can we get some relief when it comes to approval not required, and is there specific language in here?
There are actually two separate bills that are before you, and it is likely that the legislature, if they take favorable action on either, they will likely incorporate provisions of either or both into whatever they finally adopt. Now, the legislative track record of these types of efforts is not very good, frankly. There have been bills to deal with pieces of what this proposes, all the way up to comprehensive bills like these, introduced in every legislative session dating back to the 1980s, and none of them have passed. So while I can't guarantee what the legislature will or won't do, the track record of changes of this type hasn't been good. The good news is it does appear that particularly the second of these two bills, the Comprehensive Land Use Reform and Partnership Act, seems to have more support within the legislature than any of these types of bills have had in the past. And the other of these two, the LUPA proposal, was actually written by the Patrick administration and therefore has more support within the governor's administration than any of these bills have in the past. So I guess I would have to say that the chances are better than they have been in the past, but it is definitely an uphill battle. I think if the council wishes to support these, that will only aid in their likelihood of passage, but obviously it won't guarantee it. The gist of what these bills, you are correct, these are complicated bills. I will give you the 30,000-foot view, and I will talk specifically about the A&R piece because that's what prompted this being on the discussion. The bills are very similar, and both bills' primary focus is to, for the first time in the history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, encourage some real meaningful linkage between the planning that communities do and the land use regulation that communities implement. There has never been any requirement that any zoning amendment or other land use regulation adopted at the local level have any relationship whatsoever to any master plan or other document that the municipality has ever developed. We in Lowell, I think, are fortunate that in spite of not having any state requirement for that, we actually do have a zoning code that was adopted following a comprehensive master planning process and in large part is consistent with that. And I know we've had some discussion earlier this evening about a few areas that are not, but I would suggest that the vast majority of it is indeed consistent with the plan. We're now updating our plan, and whether or not these pass, I would anticipate that as a result of the update of the plan, there would be some updates to our land use regulations, among other things that would go with that. However, if these bills pass, what they provide for communities like Lowell is the opportunity to have access to a number of additional tools and local controls that we don't presently enjoy, and those communities that do not plan ahead and coordinate their land use regulations with their plans would not have the benefit of, even if these bills pass. So they do create an opportunity for us to be rewarded, frankly, for the good planning and linkage that the City Council and the City Administration in the past has done here in Lowell. One of those areas where there would be an opportunity for greater local control under these bills is dealing with approval not required plans. And the way the current subdivision control law works, it essentially creates approval not required plans by exception. It basically says what the subdivision control law does not apply to and therefore does not require approval and therefore has no notification, has no public hearing, has no discretion or anything else. It basically is you can't consider this a subdivision and you therefore can't do any of the things you do with subdivisions. What these bills both do in slightly different ways, but they're very similar, is create instead a minor subdivision plan. And essentially this would be something that every municipality would adopt their own regulations governing minor subdivisions. We would have more rights if we are one of those communities that gets certified as linking planning and zoning in terms of what our discretion could be. And we would be able to enact regulations that govern the nature of what developers would have to do to make sites suitable for the creation of new lots in terms of access. We would be able to create some notification processes. Now, I don't want to completely overstate what the reforms would be. The reforms would still allow certain types of subdivisions to happen without public hearings. They would still allow certain types of subdivisions to happen essentially by right if the developers could demonstrate that certain conditions of zoning compliance and adequate roadway development do exist. But they would give us discretion in terms of what that process is. And I think the largest aspect of the complaints around the Livingston Avenue property with respect to the subdivision. I realize there are complaints with respect to zoning, there are complaints with respect to the design of the building, but with respect to the subdivision, it seems that the largest component of the complaints is frankly that it was done with no notice process, with no kind of input process of any kind, no discretion. And this would indeed give a greater opportunity to both create a notification process and create some, not a lot, but some discretion with respect to A&R plans. To deal with some of the other issues related to Livingston Avenue, we need to look to things like zoning, the possible creation of a historic district, and so on, all of which I think will continue to be discussed in future meetings of the council and in interactions with the neighborhoods. But this would give us the best chance that any currently pending legislation has of trying to increase our ability to control and to notify the public about approval not required, or what are now approval not required subdivision plans.
Thank you, Mr. Bakey. And that's the one section that I did focus on, and it's in the second bill under Section 4181, minor subdivisions. And as you mentioned, it does reference some public notification process. One item that did catch my eye is this is not scheduled to take effect until 2017. And again, there are some rebuttal processes, but as you mentioned, the concern right now is the notification process with A&R, and this will not completely solve what
No.
we're trying to achieve.
No, it absolutely will not. I don't want anyone to leave here believing that these bills will allow municipalities to completely stop the kinds of subdivisions that currently occur under the approval not required process. I don't believe there is any bill before the legislature that would give us that authority at the moment.
Thank you. Council Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, or Mr. Bakey, if you know, have other statewide associations weighed in on this? I know, Mr. Bakey participates in Association of Planners statewide. You did mention the administration is supportive of these bills. Are any of those types of organizations supportive? We know of who's taken positions in favor of this bill?
I'd have to check to be sure, but I believe given that it increases local discretion and local authority, that the Mass Municipal Association would be in favor of this bill as well, and that would include the Mayor's Association, the Mayor Managers, and the Selectmen's Association as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to past Mass Municipal Association meetings, years ago. I want to say 7, 8, 9 years ago, and the topic of A&R plans, is a thorn in the side of a lot of communities. It's certainly not just Lowell, but there's a big resistance to do anything about it. So, it's encouraging to see at least the administration getting behind this notion of more local control, and if there are other statewide groups, that I guess it increases its chances.
By the same token, we're up against the Home Builders Association and other interests as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilor Murphy,
Yes.
Councilor Broderick,
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott,
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça,
Yes.
Councilor Mercia,
Yes.
Mayor Milonazzo.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. The next item, ordinance. We have an ordinance to amend Chapter 150 fees, line item 57.14, delete per unit. I'll give the first reading. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinance for the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, the code with respect to Chapter 150 thereof entitled Fees. Motion by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Dakota, to refer this to a public hearing June 14th. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. What I would suggest that we do, if it's okay with my colleagues, is that we take the executive session item number 8 and move that to the end of the agenda.
Yes, so moved.
So moved by Councilor Mercia to suspend the rules, move that to the end of the agenda, but second by Councilor Mendonça. Roll call on moving that to the end of the agenda.
Councilor Murphy,
Yes.
Councilor Broderick,
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott,
Yes.
Councilor Martin,
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça,
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazzo.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Under reports, report of the Finance Subcommittee. There's a meeting this evening on the Amoresco contract. The chair recognizes Councilor Elliott.
I will be brief, Mr. Mayor. The Finance Subcommittee met this evening to discuss the Amoresco project, and we had represented with the manager, Mr. Moses, members of the subcommittee, Councilor Broderick, Councilor Mendonça, Councilor Dakota, Councilor Caulfield, as I mentioned, the manager, Mr. Moses, and Councilor Rita Mercia. I think everybody was there. And the essence of the meeting was to discuss the contract, to get an update on the projects that have been completed to date, where we are, what the future looks like, and personally just to get an understanding on how this contract is working. I did learn 2 weeks ago that we from the contract, we get the contract, Mr. Manager, thank you. And we did hire, as we did with the Morey School, sort of an independent person to act as the city's watchdog for all of the bids, all the contracts that are being sent out, and to make sure that the work is in compliance with those bids. So that was good news. We got an explanation from Mr. Moses and the manager on on how the savings are going to occur. There was a baseline audit done quite some time ago. We're going to measure, so that information will be used once projects are complete. And we're going to continue to get reports, continue to meet, to look at the progress and the savings that are achieved. There was a discussion on windows and air conditioning. Councilor Caulfield wants windows, Councilor Mercier wants air conditioning. So that's going to be up to the city manager on which achieves the most savings. Manager said Councilor Mercier with air conditioning. So that was really it was really a report of progress, Mr. Mayor. Motion by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilman Donta, to recess and to just get reports as and meet at a later time to look at the reports, look at the progress, and just keep an eye on the law and order.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Elliott. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you. That was an excellent recap. Just like to add that we were told that the costs have come in below budget, and as a result, we're going to be able to increase the scope and potentially obtain more savings or realize more savings. So I just want to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the report? Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. All those in favor? Accepting the report as a report of progress, signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Councilor Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Wednesday, I attended and spoke before the monthly Board of Parks meeting, requesting to keep the park lights on 1 hour longer. I was pleased to know that the report in motion was forwarded by the manager, and the Board of Parks unanimously supported this motion, and 11 parks in the city will allow people to play 1 hour longer in the parks, which should make the members of the Lowell Roundtable on Substance Abuse Prevention quite happy, as this was their suggestion and request. Thank you.
I just want you to know that when Councilor Caulfield gets his report back from the Law Department, that will not be allowed, that report.
What's that?
Just so you know. Just so, I mean, again, I give you all a wide berth. Just when he gets his report back, that won't be allowed.
I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Mercier just gave a report that's not on the agenda, and you've asked a report on Robert's Rules, which you're going to get next week. And when that comes in, that report will not be allowed. Just so you know, just be careful what you ask for. Continuing on with the motions, Councilor Caulfield. Motion, City Council requests the city manager have the traffic engineer explore the possibility of placing a four-way stop at the intersection of Rayner Street and Monadnock Street. Seconded by Councilor Mercier. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A constituent asked me to file this motion. I know that the state kind of are against four-way stop signs, and let the traffic engineer go up and to examine this issue. And I told the constituent that the traffic engineer would look at that. The motion speaks for itself.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to the vote. Next motion by Councilor Caulfield. City Council requests the city manager have the proper department or agency address the annoying potholes in the vicinity of 355 to 366 Andover Street. Seconded by Councilor Martin. Councilor Caulfield.
Mr. Mayor, I think you're aware of this issue.
Yes.
It's been going on for 6-7 years, and people are complaining that it's very, very annoying, whether it's a car, a truck, hubcaps everywhere, and there's these potholes are very, very annoying. Plus, they're unsettling too. So I would like to see if you could address that.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Yes,
This issue came up before about re-cementing that portion, and what the problem is, Mr. Manager, when you patch it with hot top, that hot top comes right out. And you're gonna have to, eventually do the right thing and replace that with some cement.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Next motion by Councilor Murphy. City Council requests the city manager to further improve the building permitting process for homeowners. Seconded by Councilman Mendonça. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The request is fairly simple. Just to separate out the packets that are given out to homeowners and contractors, because what I've found is that several people have complained that they get these large, 6-page packets that are really intended just for contractors, that require liability insurance, proof of liability and workman's compensation insurance and that whole thing. So it's actually resulted in a few trips back to the office. I appreciate that it's been moved all into one office and you're not bouncing around, but some people have found that you're still coming back 2 or 3 times to actually get what it is they're seeking. And so that can create a problem in terms of people either just deciding not to get a permit or people not doing the work itself to improve their homes. Usually it's just a small project, but I think it's important in terms of getting those permit fees, but also for public safety reasons that it's separated out and that work is in fact encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to the vote. Next motion by Councilor Dakota. Motion, City Council requests the city manager to review, update the sidewalk sales licensing policies to assist small businesses. Seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For several months, many of the small business owners have been meeting downtown to support some of the programming coming out of City Hall through Case and Cool. And one of the programs is to do some sidewalk seating, coordinated sidewalk seating on Friday, sidewalk sales on Fridays throughout the summer. And it is somewhat cumbersome to get a sidewalk sales permit. It's actually more difficult than getting an outdoor seating permit. So if that can be reviewed and strategies developed to make it easier, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. The last motion by Councilor Elliott. Motion requests the City Council clarify language in responsible pit bull ownership ordinance in section J-3A, reference exceptions to provision safe dog training.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. I know there's been a lot of discussion on the ordinance, and it's coming up for a public hearing this week, but shortly after last week's meeting, we all received an email from a woman apparently that volunteers at the Humane Society, and the Humane Society had also received calls asking about safe dog training. And I actually met with the executive director, Jill, and she concurred that that the Humane Society does not have any safe dog training program. They have an assessment program. But I think people were concerned. They were a little upset that this was going to be included. And I did look at the language, and we received a response, and I don't have it, Mr. Mayor. I know that you received a response from Michael Kiley, but I just thought it was important enough, knowing we're going into the public hearing, that we at least clarify what we're trying to achieve. And the Humane Society did send a letter. She said she sent it to all of us, but I didn't get it. And I just wanted to read, would like to read one little excerpt. The Humane Society evaluates every animal that enters our shelter before moving it forward with the adoption process. Upon entering the shelter, a 3-page personality profile is gathered from each owner. It goes on. The Lowell Humane Society uses a variation of safer dog behavior evaluation program, but they do not provide any safe dog training. So I think that language needs to be clarified, because I was under the assumption that a certificate or once they receive safe dog training, that the Humane Society was going to sign off on it, or they would be responsible. And when we had members sitting here, there was not a response. So that's the gist of the motion, just to clarify. How is this going to be, when somebody signs off on it, who is going to do it, and what viable or reputable organization can we trust?
If I could, I think before Tuesday's public hearing, we'll get clarification from the law department, working with the Lowell Humane Society, to make sure that, because again, in their opinion, their evaluation program supersedes the safe dog training. That's their opinion. I don't have that much knowledge regarding that, but I think if we do get some information, further information from the Lowell Humane Society, and the MSPCA, working with the law department, will get that in writing clarification. Council Caulfield.
Mr. Mayor, just one question. Who inserted that, or who brought that language into the ordinance?
It was already in the Worcester ordinance.
What?
It was already in the Worcester ordinance, and Attorney Fenton included that language from the Worcester ordinance.
It was in the Worcester ordinance?
Correct, yes.
Because during the Public Safety Subcommittee meeting, you were present.
Correct.
I asked several times, who's going to sign off on the safe dog training?
Right.
And not one person went to the podium indicating that they would, or the Lowell Humane Society would. And now I'm kind of troubled by the fact that that's in there. I don't think anyone's agreed to that.
Okay. Again, it is in there, and obviously it's going to be up for public hearing, and once we go through the public hearing, if that gets...
Well, I'll ask that question again at the
Okay.
public hearing.
Okay, but
You can
between
rest-
now and Tuesday, between now and the 14th...
You can rest
we'll,
assured that question will be asked, not once, but several times.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Before we go into executive session, I don't believe there's any other motions to come before the council, so the motion would be in order to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending eminent domain litigation, public discussion of which may be detrimental to the city's position or may have a detrimental effect on the city's position, and the city council will adjourn from the executive session. Motion by Councilor Marita Mercia, second by Councilor Dakota. Roll call.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield? Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. I assume we're meeting in the managers' conference room?
There's no meeting next week.